Hey, welcome to the CineFiles. Sword, sorcery, and skin. And here we are with my co-hosts, Jeff Gallishaw, Eric Cohen,
Steel and CROM.
and I am Michael Foltz, and I know the riddle of steel. On the CineFile, sometimes what we like to do is we start with a poor to mediocre film, and then we work our way up to the best film. That's what we like to do sometimes, most of the time. Here, we're going to go the opposite route because, there is a method to my madness here. The first film that we're going to discuss is basically the film that started this whole thing off. And we're going to go with John Milius's Conan the Barbarian. And interesting little brief history of this film. There was a producer named Ed Pressman who wanted to make a Conan film since like the late 60s. And he was looking to secure the licensing from a couple different parties. He did secure the licensing, and they were set to make the film in 1975. And
that's because the licensing for the Conan property wasn't available until then.
Right,
That's
right.
I understand it. He wasn't able to get the rights.
Right. What's unbelievable is even back in 1975, the film was actually started pre-production in 1980. But 5 years before, they were still interested in Schwarzenegger. It went through Charles Bronson, William Smith. I think there was another one.
Playing his dad in Conan.
Right, right. And there was one other actor that they were interested in. But anyway, they went with Schwarzenegger. They thought he showed a lot of charisma in Pumping Iron. They got Oliver Stone.
Right.
In the middle of his drug addiction.
Yeah, and he ended up coming up with this he gets credit in the movie, but they didn't use any of his script.
They used
ideas.
It was a post-apocalyptic Conan, 10,000 years in the future.
And Milius has called it a drug fever dream.
Yes.
And he said that favorably. He didn't say that as a criticism. It's like actually
he was doing a lot of coke and a lot of depressants, so he was doing the uppers and the downers. So he was really going through everything. So Milius was the one that revised the script, and John Milius, who had a lot of screenwriting experience from Apocalypse Now, Magnum Force, Dirty Harry, and his own film that he did, Big Wednesday, which was a surfer film, which I think is just kind of strange because you go from a surfing movie to Conan the Barbarian. Now, if I was
it has a certain macho philosophy for him.
He brought in the same composer.
Yeah, a Basil Polidorus.
One of the great movie soundtracks.
And one of the co-stars is a surfer who plays
Jerry
himself
Lopez.
in Big Wednesday.
And I'll tell you right now, and I think the whole time we've been doing the CineFiles, I have never once held back on this. Conan is in my official top 10 movies of all time. It's one of my favorites. I think it just comes at a time, I think I was 11 or 12 years old when it comes out. But it's interesting because it's not all Conan Howard source material throughout.
They use some stories.
He uses Asian filmmaking influences like Seven Samurai and Qui-Gon.
The whole concept from Qui-Gon.
Yeah, Qui-Gon.
That's the scene where Conan, he thinks he's dying, or they think
no, he's on the verge of death.
They paint his entire body so the demons and the spirits don't get him and don't take him away.
Right, and
that's directly from Qui-Gon.
Well, I, of course, saw Conan the Destroyer before I saw Conan the Barbarian.
Which is fucking heartbreaking, but go on.
Which I saw later in life. I saw Conan the Barbarian more like around when I was 18, because all I remember from when I was a kid seeing it on television was the ending with James Earl Jones turning into the snake. But what I have to say about this film is I don't love it as much as you do, but I will say it's one of the best films we're watching in this episode, and it would definitely make my top 100 because there's just something about it. There's like a certain machismo, as you were talking about with John Milius, that goes with this film. It just makes you feel macho watching it, even with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they use him properly because they know not to really let him speak or anybody speak through most, like half the film is more music, action, and then sometimes somebody will say something that's more meaningful instead of, just yap, yap, yap battle scene.
For me, Conan the Barbarian is a film that improves every time I've seen it. In fact, it's complete coincidence. I had rewatched it just before you wanted to do this episode, which you asked to do about, like, say, almost a month ago, maybe just a little less than that, because they've been showing on Showtime a lot.
Oh, okay.
And I would say the most impressive thing about Conan is the composition of the shots. It's a beautiful film to look at.
Yes.
I would say that I think it's an imperfect film. There are issues I have with the film still to this day. My biggest issue with the film is that a film version of Conan really should embrace the weird. And I know I get that, like, from the research and the interviews I read with Milius, he wanted to get away from that. He wanted to, like, just pare it down to this man on a mission, finding himself, make it about him and his hero journey kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the weirdest it gets is, like, maybe when Thulsa Doom kind of turns into that snake creature or whatever.
Which is pretty weird.
Which is weird, and when he fights
the giant snake, that's pretty weird.
But having seen it recently, it's not that impressive to look at, and it doesn't come across as that threatening, to me anyway. Like, I knew that the original scripts and original concept drawings, they apparently on the film, they had him, like, battling ape men and stuff like that, like really cool, crazy creatures and stuff like that, which is part of the world of Conan. And there was, like, a tonal shift where it become a little too silly, tongue-in-cheek, like when he punches the camel, where there's, like, little moments that come out of left field for me that don't match the tone of the film. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I like it a hell of a lot better now than the first time I saw it.
Did you think that James Earl Jones was that campy during it? Because he's been accused of campy, but the more I look at it, the more it's really appropriate.
Well, it seemed more to me like theatrical, if anything, because it fits in with the movie, but sometimes it feels like he's in a separate movie, like he's taking it a little more seriously than anybody else is. Because, well, I mean, he's not really in any of the action scenes. He more comes in at the end of half of them. I mean, really, the only action he does is cut off Conan's mother's head. And obviously that could be a stunt person. So I thought he actually gives it more dramatic weight. Now, if I was going to say more campy performance, that would be Max von Sydow. More campy.
Which was actually supposed to be Sterling Hayden, but he was sick.
I wouldn't say campy. I would say
over the top,
operatic.
Okay.
Which is
I don't think that was campy.
But that's the movie, and it makes sense. I would say James Earl Jones was almost the opposite of camp in this film. He was almost stoic. Milius, did you see the documentary Milius yet?
Not yet.
Okay. In the documentary, James Earl Jones was interviewed about Conan, and Milius had to be very specific with Schwarzenegger, like give him specific instructions, like when you would do this, act like that, all this stuff. And usually that's a no-no. Like directors should not tell that to actors. Directors should, like, suggest things, plant seeds, and let the actors discover it on their own. That's a process actors like. But Schwarzenegger was so inexperienced. Schwarzenegger actually asked me, just tell me specifically what you want me to do. James Earl Jones, after watching how he was handling Schwarzenegger and doing it so well, James Earl Jones went up to me and said, what you're doing with Schwarzenegger, do the same thing for me. Sandal Bergman, that's the other weak point for me.
Which was strange because she won a Golden Globe for that performance, which is very strange.
Which is very strange. I find it really hard to watch her. I mean, she's not hard to look at, but
I kind of like that speech, though, when I like that speech where she's saying, let's go. We can escape from here. He's a sorcerer. He's evil. We can just escape. I like that little speech.
I just don't like her delivery. I'm not a fan of her acting. Ron Cobb did a production design on Conan. He also did production design on Star Wars. Fantastic, a legendary artist.
Well, another great thing about
did Alien.
Matter of fact, he was picked up off Alien. He went from Alien directly to Conan. The follow-up film, which almost seemed to parallel it, but I think it was brought in and hurried up production because of the popularity of Conan the Barbarian, was The Sword and the Sorcerer, which happened to be the double feature that I saw the same night as Conan.
A lot of these films we're talking about all came out at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, within like one or 2 years of each other.
In fact, we should quickly mention a film called Hawk the Slayer, which is usually lumped in as a Conan ripoff, but it actually came out before Conan. It was actually a made-for-TV movie in Britain that got theatrically released, but everyone talked about Hawk the Slayer with great fondness. Oh yeah, that's a sword and sorcery movie you should talk about. It's like, well, actually, it doesn't really fall in the category we're talking about.
It's like behind instead of the evolution.
But it actually was a pre-Conan sword and sorcery film by 1 year.
So when you saw the poster for Sword and the Sorcerer, the first one, you thought, okay, this is going to be the same thing as Conan, like a Hyborian aged barbarian, sword and sandal, loincloths and everything, and it's not that at all. It's a medieval tale, almost like in the same styles like Excalibur, or Lord of the Rings, or whatever, in like this made up country or whatever, and it's swashbuckling. Conan,
I was going to say it's more reminiscent of cliffhanger serials and
Conan is not swashbuckler like you were describing in the sword styles.
Well, it is swashbuckling. It's not, but in the same league. This is what I always loved about Sword and Sorcerer is how tongue-in-cheek, and it's like really embraces the 1930s, 40s kind of aesthetic approach to that kind of thing.
I think this is an incredibly well-directed film for the microscopic budget they were on.
The best film Albert Pyun has ever made.
This
is the guy who made the Captain America movie.
Which was an atrocity.
Never saw that one.
Best film he ever made.
I always thought Albert Pyun was some like Korean guy they got off the boat from South Korea.
You're being racist. You're just
racist.
Okay, maybe I was. Turns out he's Hawaiian.
Again, racist. I think it's still a lot of fun. There are elements that are cheap looking and cheesy.
Yeah.
But it's a fun movie.
But you know what? They get around it, though. They get around it.
It is a ridiculously complicated movie, though. I mean, you've got, like, all these, like, people set up to be... You have this whole, like, heir to the throne plot, this guy that's set up to be the princess. And it turns out
who's related to who?
Is actually the guy who's, like, supposed to inherit the throne. And then you have this, like, side character who's sort of like a double agent. And it turns out, no, he's actually the sorcerer in disguise.
He's a triple agent.
He's played by George Maharis, who, was popular in that TV series, Route 66 from, like, the 60s,
But George Maharis is a really evil-looking guy. You had the best... I was going to say, you had the best evil-looking men in this movie. Richard Lynch, the god of evil.
And Lee Horsley is solid.
He's very solid. Very solid, very charismatic, very Dylan McDermott-esque.
He nails that sort of classic, sort of
cocky
40s, 50s, though. Like, even like the way he speaks, it's almost Errol Flynnish.
Yeah.
He gets it. Everyone gets the kind of movie they're in. And it's a lot of fun in that way.
Kathleen Beller, better than you would expect. But there were so many wonderful little inventions in this film that are such eye candy, besides Kathleen Beller's ass.
The triple sword.
The triple sword. The
that
triple
shoots
fucking
out.
sword. No, you could say it was a quadruple sword because it had the 3 blades plus the secret blade, the short sword.
That was one of my favorite elements of the film watching as a child. I unfortunately didn't get to watch it as recently as you guys, so I don't remember the little details, but I remember the finale. That was probably my favorite part of the whole film, because I just like fighting in this dark pit. He has the 3 swords, he's shooting them out, and then finally when he has the final battle, he's down to 1 sword, and the princess is looking fucking hot. I'm sorry. You have your Sybil Danning. I don't know the actress's name. But
Kathleen Beller.
But I just thought when I was a kid, she was it. And I unfortunately never saw her in anything else. But
she was in Dynasty for a while.
Again, I didn't see her in anything else.
Well, he had the short sword, and what was great is he had the sword built into the gauntlet, too. The blade, the hidden blade. I'm like, this guy's like the James Bond of medieval heroes. The movie hooks you almost instantly with Cromwell going in with his soldiers into this cave to resurrect this ancient demonic sorcerer Zusha of Delos. And
Richard Mall,
who you would never recognize.
Richard Mall.
You'd never recognize.
Yeah.
Bull.
Yeah, you'd never recognize him at all, but because the makeup is so good and I think Zusha is one of the most terrifying villains of all time, and anybody that can make Richard.
Agree with that?
No, I mean,
okay.
terrifying in the sense that like makeup and all that. I mean, he was just fucking scary as hell, and the crypt that he was in. That made me physically ill when I saw that where all the faces started. I was eating Taco Bell and I was 11.
It's cool that they had this elaborate myth, so to speak. Cromwell enlists the help and then gets rid of him, like tries to dispatch of him. He doesn't need him anymore, and that becomes this whole other subplot where it could have gone either way, where the sorcerer either becomes a bad guy or he sides with the good guys just to get revenge on Cromwell. So you had all these people kind of, and that's why the George Maharis character was interesting to me at first, because the big surprise is that he's the sorcerer. Spoiler at the end, but at that point you think he's just a double agent. You don't know what side he's actually on. He could be a good guy or a bad guy.
The other somewhat somewhat okay budgeted film was Don Coscarelli's The Beastmaster.
Yes.
And that came out, I think, 2 years after Conan? I think so. And that didn't look that bad. My only complaint with The Beastmaster, I think it showed a lot of invention.
Because a black man's in it?
No, but in terms of, John Amos, which is very strange casting. But those weird avian people that would basically use, wrap you in their wings and secrete acid. These are terrifying creatures, but yet somehow they will fight on the side of the good, even though they're completely terrifying monsters. Although what's scarier, I think, is Rip Torn with a fake nose throughout this whole film.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Rip Torn can barely get rid of the Texas accent
Either
throughout.
it may not have aired yet. It'll probably have to air afterwards because it requires some serious compositing and special effects. So we did an episode on 70s, 80s space opera. Star Crash had Joe Spinell. This is like Rip Torn Star Crash in a weird kind of way. It's like this odd casting choice to play the villain in this weird sword and sorcery kind of.
Yeah, I expected him, and later on in life when I saw the film, I expected Rip Torn at any time to go, "I'm from Texas, and you called me Yella, so we're going to have to go outside and fight." Because he actually said that to Dennis Hopper, who called him Yella. But he's got a fake nose in it. He plays a high priest, similar to Thulsa Doom and Conan. And it's just very weird. And Mark Singer, he's got like negative charisma. I found him very
no. Out of all the
uncharismatic.
films, I found one of films lead even more uncharismatic than Mark Singer. But growing up, this was my movie. It came on Channel 11 all the time. I loved it. He telepathically talked to animals. He had a falcon.
Wait a second. So you watch it on normal TV? Did you ever watch it on cable? Because you have that Tanya Roberts.
Unfortunately, no,
by
I have not
the way,
seen-
the Tanya Roberts scene. High five.
That's what the show's called.
I
will have to see the
I was in
unrated
love with
version.
Tanya Roberts for a good
Tanya
10
Roberts.
years because of Charlie's Angels and that scene. So she could, I almost.
Too bad she was like the worst Bond girl ever, but.
Well, yeah, her and Denise Richards.
Actually, Denise Richards is a little bit better.
I think the problem was Tanya Roberts was drunk most of that
Tanya
show.
Roberts, all she does, we're getting off topic. All she does in A View to a Kill is either give exposition or scream a lot. That's it. That's all. Those are the two.
She
things
pretty much did the same thing in Beastmaster, just no exposition. She was just screaming a lot. She was topless.
No exposition.
But she was angry
whatsoever.
sometimes in this film.
The move. I mean, her boobs were tremendous. She was a beautiful woman.
Actually, she was all exposition.
He had that cool weapon.
Oh,
It was
yeah, it's
like a
like
giant Chinese star,
Yeah,
basically.
but then it would come back and it wouldn't hurt him because I guess it retracted the blade. And come on, John Amos in a leather leotard type outfit. I don't know what the hell is, but that rivals Cruising for that scene where the black man with the cowboy hat just comes out.
You ever see the sequel where he's like set in time to the present?
I've heard of it. I never sat through
I never
it.
saw it. Yeah.
I think I've only seen it. I've never seen it all the way through. I've just seen bits and pieces. Beastmaster. I'm not a huge fan of Beastmaster. I liked it okay when I was younger.
Yeah, it was one of my
Something I would
favorites as a
watch,
kid.
but I always found myself just not invested in the storyline. I'm not big on like heroes that can communicate with animal type stories or something.
That was cool. To
I
me.
just
doesn't
didn't.
appeal to
I
me.
just didn't like Mark Singer. I just didn't believe in him as a hero at all.
This kind of reminded me of He-Man before He-Man came out, or like it was based off. He-Man was based off of it the most.
You know how I said that if I had any issue with the Sword and the Sorcerer is that it was almost too complicated a plot. Beastmaster is too simple a plot. There's really no meat there. It's just what it is, and you're just hoping, God, throw in like another character or give us a twist or something.
Okay, although we see Beastmaster as a step down from Conan, or maybe a half a step down from Sword and the Sorcerer, but it was still competently directed and everything. It seemed like you could maximize whatever budget you had. And then we go to the go to the next step down, which would be Deathstalker.
No.
Yeah, it is. Because Barbarian Queen was
after Deathstalker.
Yeah, was after
I
Deathstalker.
thought we were going by quality because I was about to say.
Holy shit! Are you
Barbarian
kidding
Queen,
me?
I liked a lot more than I liked.
How could you
Deathstalker.
like Barbarian Queen more than Deathstalker?
Because at least the Barbarian Queen seems to be more
Barbarian-
from a female point of view. And also, I'm sorry, the lead of Deathstalker, you want to talk about the least charismatic.
Richard Hill?
Yes. He had no. I didn't care what happened.
Folks,
I hated him.
It's fair to say, before we confuse anybody, it's fair to talk about these films sort of side by side because it stars Lena Clarkson, who was a big B-movie actress. Actually, it was Deathstalker got her to lead in
Barbarian Queen because of
her career for a while. Then it kind of went nowhere. She's also rather infamous as being the shooting victim of Phil Spector.
Honestly, I feel in Deathstalker, she was fantastic. She wasn't. You know what I felt like in both films, Barbarian Queen and Deathstalker? I felt like at times she was the only one trying in the film to do anything, to do anything good. And she's magnificent in Deathstalker because she comes on the scene and the way the way she comes. Let's put it this way.
Good thing in the film.
Deathstalker to me was an adolescent's dream.
Folks, throughout the entire movie, Lana Clarkson wears nothing but a cape with a hood and a G-string. That's it.
Although during one of the banquet sequences, she is wearing like the barest of like black like thing just covering her nipples.
Talking about
That's
Deathstalker.
Yes, yes.
Not Barbarian Queen.
Deathstalker. Barbarian Queen.
Don't be dissing Barbarian Queen. I'm sorry.
Dude, there are
That
so
was the
many
first
things
one I
wrong
watched.
with Barbarian Queen.
I'm not going to say it's a perfect film, but it's enjoyable.
Deathstalker, Barbarian Queen, and Sorceress were the three.
Well, don't forget She with Sandal Bergman, like her lead where she plays the head like Barbarian Queen.
Well, I'm not talking about female-centric Barbarian films. I'm talking about films
No, it was all
really
in that
emphasize the sex and the nudity.
And the rape.
Yeah, you know, you're talking about major masturbation fantasies for
Well, Deathstalker, I think, was wonderful because you had a wonderful Barbie Benton topless scene,
exactly,
where like that ogre, that pig ogre beast, like tears off. Actually, no, the slave girls tear off her top first, and then he's going up to molest her or something. But
I love the words we're using.
But what's interesting is. Lana Clarkson's character wants to save the princess from being raped just as much as the others, and that's how Lana Clarkson's character is killed, because she wants to save Barbie Benton. And if I were directing it, of course, that's where the lesbian love scene would be
For
in
no
the
reason.
film.
Well, I was going to say that Deathstalker, which is the first film to feature Lana Clarkson, Deathstalker is pretty fucking awful. It's an awful movie.
It's awful, but it's got
a fucking awful movie. But
It's
like,
not fun.
It's got its charm. I'm sorry, it's got its charm.
The one minor criticism I had for Conan the Barbarian, at least Deathstalker really embraces the weird. You've got ogres, you got trolls, you got
Big
guys
men.
with heads like boars, literally boars' heads. Not
the baloney.
Well, don't you think it's funny that he goes to get the sword of justice out of the cave, and there's like that little troll guy who is talking like he's like in a bar. He's talking like Charles Bukowski.
And he turns out to be cursed.
But once he's freed from the curse,
And
once
that's the same actor
Deathstalker
who winds
takes
up playing the villain in Barbarian Queen.
what? Because the villain in Barbarian Queen,
John Ball or something like
the
that.
villain from
That's all I
Barbarian Queen
remember.
reminds me of like Elliot Gould's fat brother who owns like a car dealership or something.
I didn't strike me as fat, but
I just remember him being old with a lot of facial hair.
He looked like a retarded Elliot Gould.
I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. There was a series of like films that were turned out. They're just sort of Argentinian American.
Deathstalker was
Right.
Argentine
And
because that's how Corman was getting financing.
Right. And Corman was producing. They're distributed by whatever it was at the time. It wasn't New Horizons at the time. It was whatever it was a Concord. What was it?
I don't recall.
But Barbarian Queen-
And Deathstalker, by the way, has many more, almost more than any other film, I think, other than porno films at the time, of gratuitous female ass shots. That's where you would start the camera point, where like a guy would pull up a woman's dress just to get the G-string ass shot. But there was those shots all over the place. I'm like, this film is wonderful.
Deathstalker had all these like weird left field '80s music video moments. You know, like the chicks with the '80s hair, like new wave hair. Like
Much more in
doing
Barbarian
this,
Queen.
like
Much more in Barbarian
Well, they had
Queen.
high hair in Barbarian Queen.
Well, I don't know.
Come
Objectively, it's not a good film.
This
at
film
all.
starts
But
off
it has
with a
lot
rape,
of
with an almost
imagination in
rape
it.
scene of primate mutants trying to rape a
Rick
girl.
Hill as a hero.
He is horrible. He cannot act.
completely
No
uncharismatic.
yes.
You know who was more charismatic? The British guy that was the fencer, that it was the double cross guy and then got his neck broken. That guy had way more charisma.
Exactly.
British Scott Baio.
He was like the Prince Baron of
And
this
he probably
film.
wasn't British. They probably just dubbed his voice with a British.
And come on, the scene where he's supposed to start a fight, he just is like hitting people, like having fun in that scene, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
you're
and then,
supposed to be on the hero
was,
side.
yeah, then he was
He
doing
has
like a
weird chest piece that just like goes down to here.
Yeah, they have showing off his abs.
costume
But he was on
choice.
like a trapeze in the middle of that banquet battle for some reason. And yet, they really went, didn't it?
While men are raping women.
All over the place.
What was it odd though
Just
that
screaming
he
on the
originally
chandelier.
starts to like rape that one girl, but then they have like a nice relationship, and then Deathstalker kills him, and the woman that he raped comes over, is like, ah, is like so upset.
Think about it. The whole setup that's basically the whole setup is about the villain getting up on this guy. It has to happen because your hero wants to rape this girl he's disguised as. And it's just like all these like, okay, that's just wrong. There's a lot of wrong in this movie.
Yeah, when
And I
Deathstalker-
don't think the filmmakers realize it.
Well, first of all, Deathstalker is just a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
You're stalking death? What the fuck does that mean?
He wants to throw us in case you survive.
Like he's been mad at death this whole time. Death, you took away all my relatives before this. I'm gonna stalk you. That doesn't makes no fucking sense. And he's referred to as Deathstalker throughout the film. That's Deathstalker. I bring Deathstalker to you. At least in Deathstalker, they try. They try. Barbarian, they didn't try.
They
didn't
tried.
even-
It was a female point of view story.
Dude, all the women talk like they were in a sitcom, especially the second lead. She was like, Al, where have you been? I am so hungry.
Yes. Okay, I will.
Yeah,
but
it
that
was-
was part of
it
the
was like a
comedy. She was hungry all the time. It was a character.
It was an 80s sitcom disguised as a Barbarian film.
The filmmaker's name is Ciro Santiago.
I just know.
I'll have to flash it up. He did a lot of he had this weird career where he was doing a lot of Argentinian art films, and it was supplementing those films by doing a lot of these B movies with Roger Corman.
Some of the worst fight choreography I
And
ever
it's
saw
not
in my
even
life.
It
It would.
I had to do research on this film so we could have more discussion about the movie. I found out, I would have never known this watching the film, that's supposed to take place during the Roman Empire.
I heard, no, they mentioned Romans once in the film at the beginning, and I thought that doesn't make any sense.
It's not only is it's a boring fucking.
And they even have a guy without an arm, but you can literally see his arm is tucked into his shirt, but yet he's supposed to be armless.
I didn't
Back
say it
to
was
the
technically
other
proficient.
warriors, you're defending it on a female point of view, but you have this one character who's like stepped out of like Saved by the Bell, which makes
It's a girl who wants to eat.
fucking
I
sense
know.
in that barbarian context.
Yeah, she talks like a modern day
It's
person, and
aren't you
like a
supposed to be just as tough
sitcom.
as these other women. I mean, you live in a world where you guys know how to.
Oh my God, I'm glad to see you.
And Lana Clarkson's sister is borderline retarded.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that
Even,
character
you
arc
know,
made no sense.
What's her name?
Cat Shay.
Yeah, she.
And the whole thing is about her trying to save her fiance, which
Who is the dullest
like,
idiot?
this
He
is-
was Deathstalker, practically.
He was
Yeah.
worse than Richard Hill. He had less
Yeah,
dialogue.
he's like Richard Hill, actually.
He does, but he actually had less charisma. All he was a bodybuilder. They must have gotten to Venice Beach.
But at least he had motivation.
Ignoring the villain.
Oh, the villain, Elliot Gould's retarded brother.
Yeah,
that was the villain.
This
The
poor
villain was
actor.
completely
He
uninteresting.
might have been worse
And
than
then when it gets
Joe
interesting, you feel
Spinell.
guilty for finding it interesting because it's like when the torturer wants to rape her. That's a really awkward scene.
It's an awkward scene because that's obviously a Jewish guy. The most hateful guy in the film is a Jewish guy.
Like raping
This
her,
is-
and
he's
it's
got
supposed
the-
to be entertaining.
When did we get into ethnicity?
He's got a skull cap.
Wow.
He looks like Stan Leibowitz from accounting. That's what he looks like.
Yeah, well,
I mean, he's
yeah,
not
I
like-
agree. You're
man.
taking a Jewish stereotype.
Where are
yeah.
we going
I'm
with
more,
this?
I'm more like, holy shit, they're really gonna go there. He's pulling down his pants and he's going up to her and he's going, huh, 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 and delivering this monologue.
Oh yeah,
And
and,
she
then she used
basically-
her vaginal muscle.
She used her vaginal muscles to trap his penis.
That is fun.
And then
fun.
what is the best way to deal with the Jewish rapist? Throw him in a vat of acid. That's the best way to deal
that
with
was
the
really bad special
but
effects,
actually,
too.
making it sound better, the actual execution is she just pushes him.
Yeah.
And there happens to be a vat of acid behind him.
Well, so you guys got our opinions on, and now to be fair, this is just a small sample of the sword and sorcery films, but we kind of narrowed it down a lot with the sword, sorcery, and skin, battling boobs, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no complaints that we didn't mention Dragon Slayer or anything
Crawl.
like that. Or Crawl, because we're talking specifically sword and sorcery films with breasts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Peter.
Excalibur could have fallen into that category.
Yeah, that's
We didn't
true.
get
Maybe
that,
that's
but
for
maybe
another.
We'll say that for another discussion.
Yeah, Peter McNichol's ass does not count in Dragon Slayer, so we'll just
Certainly not.
we'll leave it at that. But
He ain't
you know,
no
there will
Lonnie
be
Clarkson.
many. Well, hopefully not Peter McNichol's sword in the future, but there will be maybe
Whoa, hey there.
maybe
going
another
there?
discussion on this. But anyway, this is the CineFiles saying that if you ever
Before we sign off,
Oh.
don't forget to like our Facebook
Yes.
page. We have a page as well as a group. Join our group. We have that's access to our discussion forum. You want to be a part of that if you're a fan. You have
We
your own
encourage
CineFiles
that.
type of discussion. We also have a Twitter account, CineFiles TV. At CineFiles TV. Also check out Jeff's Unfinished B1 Twitter feed, the Unfinished B1 Unfinished Business Twitter feed, and he has also a Facebook group.
Unfinished Business Television,
Right.
where we talk about films.
And like our parent home, This is Infamous, also on Facebook. Check out their content.
And check out the blog, CineFilesTV.blogspot.com.
Yes, absolutely. And Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had to do a little,
Plugs.
And remember, you know what the CineFiles are all about, don't you? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. And to be honest with you, I'm such a sword and sorcerer nut that one day my dream, I have many dreams in this world, but I would love to make a sword and sorcery epic, but also make it a lesbian porno.
Will there be plenty of Jewish stereotypes in this one?
There might be one Jewish stereotype that gets thrown into a vat of acid, but that would just be honestly a tribute to Barbarian.
I think you can get Elliot Gould now to be in your film.